our regional superintendent's meeting, but I told them I'm going to be a little late, but I just say all that in case I jump off at some point.
We are focused on about an hour for the meeting.
Okay, I said, yeah, okay.
I think that'll fit more people's schedules today, it seems.
Live stream's going, Kim.
Thank you, Earl. We are good to go, Dr. Miller.
All right. Dr. Seiberg, would you call the roll, please?
I will.
All right, Dr. Evans.
Neglected to change his name. I'm sorry about that.
That's
Dr.
right.
Blanton.
Present.
Dr. Bullock. Dr. Dempsey.
Present.
Dr. Fleming.
Present.
Ms. Janeski. Dr. Graham. Dr. Houston. Dr. Houston, if you're responding, you're still muted. I'll come back to Dr. Houston. Dr. Locklear.
Here.
Dr. Marr. Dr. Miller.
Here.
Dr. Penfield. Superintendent Truitt.
Here.
Ms. Floyd. Dr. Holland.
Here.
Dr. Weddington.
Here.
Dr. Wood.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Here for the time being.
Hold on just a second. I just see that Ms. Floyd has entered the meeting. Welcome, Ms. Floyd. So I'm marking her as present. Mr. Patton. And I just want to give Dr. Houston an opportunity.
Present.
Thank you, Dr. Houston. We have quorum.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Evans. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome commission members, advisors, staff, on-site visitors, and online listeners to the August 11th, 2022 monthly meeting of the North Carolina Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission. This commission develops and recommends to the State Board of Education rules related to all aspects of licensure and educator preparation programs. My name is Patrick Miller. I am the chair of the Professional Educator Preparation and Standards Commission, and I now call this meeting to order. Our agenda and materials are available online through the DPI website at www.ncpublicschools.org on the SBE meetings link. The meeting is also audio streamed through a link located at the bottom of the eBoard agenda. I will now read the ethics statement that is required of us. Commission members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this commission. Does any member of the commission know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? If so, please state them for the record. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an actual or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Commission members, you have had an opportunity to review the proposed agenda for today's meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for the August 11, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The agenda has been approved. Thank you. The minutes from our previous commission meeting on June 9th, 2022 have been prepared and made available to you. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion from Superintendent Truitt, and Dr. Locklear will say you have made the second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the minutes from the June 9th, 2022 meeting have been approved. Thank you. Now Dr. Evans will present the DPI and state board updates. Dr. Evans.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. There is only one update for this month, and it is on LICN 001. That went for action during the August state board meeting, and it was approved unanimously by the State Board of Education. And the policy amendments were focusing on the lifetime license and being able to, for that renewal cycle, for if you are holding a continuing professional license prior to converting to a lifetime license, whether you would have to earn the CEUs for that renewal cycle. And as you know, Pepsi had recommended not needing those CEUs. And so that was approved by the state board. And then also the adding teaching license, that notification, that clarification about completing one of the requirements to add the teaching license. And in addition, the state board also added the definition of a clear license, and that would be either holding a CPL, a continuing professional license, or an initial professional license with all coursework requirements completed, with testing only remaining. So that was the that was the one. I'm sorry, I'm just muting. That was the one state board update for this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. I think you're still on deck to present the annual Pepsi report for 2021-22 for discussion and action.
Yes, I am. Let me share my screen. So each year, as you know, there's an annual report that is due by December 1st to the General Assembly that talks about the annual happenings for Pepsi, and this is for 2021 to 2022. And the annual review period for this report is September 1st, 2021 to September 1st, 2022. And so you'll see that there's an introduction. I'll just go through each of the sections of the report. There's an introduction that talks about what legislation supports Pepsi and what Pepsi is, the purpose of Pepsi, and then it goes into the committee membership and structure. And then I use the design from legislation to lay out who is in what role appointed by either the Senate or the House. And you can see it starts with Dr. Miller and ends with Superintendent Truitt, and it gives their roles, so your role representation and then your term. And I have updated those terms according to some of the members have been reappointed, and then some have been have decided not to renew and will be replaced. And so you can see who has been who will be replaced, and they're designated by the asterisks down below. And so that would be Dr. Miller, Ms. Janeski, Dr. Wood, and Ms. Floyd. And then you can see who will be replacing them. Dr. Scott Elliott will replace Dr. Miller. Ms. Janeski will be replaced by Ms. Madison Edwards, Dr. Wood by Dr. Bill Griffin, and Ms. Floyd by Ms. Leah Carper. And then we go into NCDPI and the personnel here who support you as a commission. And as you know, it's obviously Superintendent Truitt as being part of DPI, but then also Dr. Tomberlin, Dr. Seiberg, and myself. And then we get into the meetings that we've had this year, and everyone should give themselves a pat on the back. We have had 65 meetings this year. We have had quite a few meetings this year. And they have all been virtual, which had started due to COVID-19. So at the request of the state board asked for a policy guide, and our list of policies has shrunk compared to last year. However, 57 of our meetings, we had 57 meetings, not 65. We had 57 meetings. However, I think it's over 40 of them were subcommittee meetings for the teacher reform draft model, the pathways model. And so that's where a bulk of our work has gone over the past year, and now over a year and a half. So I just want to, even though our policy list has shrunk, we have been working very hard on, or the commission has been working very hard on putting this pathways model together. So you can look through here, and these are hyperlinked according to those particular meetings, and it shows what happens at each meeting, and if a particular item has an outcome, such as being approved at the state board. I tried to make sure that that is a piece of the information within those meetings. I will note that at the bottom of the meetings, it is incomplete because we have not had all of our meetings yet. So you'll see that the last subcommittee meetings and joint co-chair meeting, since they have not happened yet, they will be filled in at a later date. And then we always end with areas of focus for the commission moving forward. So I go through the subcommittee work that we will dive into after we have worked on the pathways model through, I'm sure, through the fall. But congratulations to the commission. You have worked very hard this year on a volunteer basis. So I want to give everyone kudos for that. Any questions about the report?
Hearing no questions, do we have a motion to approve the Pepsi annual report for 2021-22 so we can send it to the state board for discussion in September?
So moved.
Thank you, Marcy. Do we have a second?
Second. Chris.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the Pepsi annual report for 2021-22. Is there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, those in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The motion carries. The report is approved. Thank you, Dr. Evans. Now the Principal Advisory Council, or PAC, which is led by Mr. Tabari Wallace, Special Advisor to the State Superintendent for Principal Engagement, will present an informational item on school administrator licensure. Mr. Wallace, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. Hello, all assembled. I want to say good morning to all the Pepsi members that are assembled here. Special shout out to State Superintendent Catherine Truitt and to all the superintendent, principal, and teachers of the year that are assembled here this morning. I am Tabari Wallace, and I am joined this morning by Maria Mills, Regional Principal of the Year for Charter Schools. And we're going to take you through our work thus far in regards to principal preparation. Next slide. First half of today's presentation will summarize the principal preparation work we've done to date. As many of you know, what is in law right now for principal preparation is not aligned with what has been going on in the field. The board has asked a number of stakeholder groups, which you will see later on in this presentation, to weigh in on this so that they can make an informed decision on a recommendation for changes to the existing law. The second half will then dive into the latest work of our North Carolina Principal Advisory Group and what we have been exploring. They have been asked by the board to explore what components and experiences should be in place for a rigorous and thorough principal internship experience. These contributions will then be used to help drive policy improvements outlining the principal internship requirements, which will come to you, Pepsi, for your consideration. At the end, we will look to touch on some ideas that came up in our advisory group's work that may be worth additional investigation. Next. We have here, just so you can see that we have consulted with experts in the field to come up with these recommendations. We have provided for you a list of the principal advisory group, the ones that are currently principals, and these compose of North Carolina principals of the year for their respective years, which makes them an expert. But also we have the regional principals of the year, which they are experts in their region for the year 2022 to 23. We just added this in for your reference so you can know where these recommendations came from. Next slide, please. All right, this all began with the legislative waiver back in November 2021 for those principals that may not have met requirements in law to continue to maintain their existing license. At that time, the waiver was to be in place until August 2022. At that point, all requirements in law previously established would come back into play. Because of this, there was an urgency to gather stakeholders to review the current requirements in law for principal preparation and propose for formal changes to the law before the waiver ran out. That's what all this work we have been doing to this date, trying to get consensus from the field on what should be in law to produce high quality, well-prepared principal candidates and then inform lawmakers with those suggestions. In the most recent update, which was just last month, the legislative waiver was extended through August 2024, giving us time to complete this work. This is to allow the sufficient time so we can review and pass any changes in law by the legislature, as well as to refine and improve policy related to principal prep. What you're about to see in these next couple of slides, we ask these 4 questions. What constitutes a year-long internship? Whether candidates should have classroom teaching experience as a requirement for entrance into a program, whether a test should be a requirement for licensure, and whether a master's in school administration should be required of all principals, or whether a candidate who has already attained a master's in some other educational license area can just simply go through our add-on license or our licensure-only programs. And as you can see, I know y'all are probably looking at it as like, man, y'all talk to the entire state. Well, that's exactly what I've been taught by Superintendent Truitt, to make sure that everyone has a voice and a weigh-in prior to policy being deployed. So I know this is an exhaustive list. We've been working hard, y'all. It's been about a year now, but we just wanted to make sure we were fully informed before we came to a decision. The year-long internship, go back, Kim. Okay, thank you. As you can see here, the year-long internship pretty much was all supported. We gained consensus on that. It kind of varied with the hours. We have a range from 300 all the way to what TP3, the North Carolina Principal Fellows, what they require, which is 1,500. So DPI settled on the recommendation of a minimum of 1,000 hours, and the year-long internship should be 2 semesters. And I think the subgroup from Pepsi came in with a range of no fewer than 500 hours, which makes the recommendation comprehensive. Next slide. In regards to teaching experience, it was pretty much a consensus that 4 years of teaching experience within the licensure area should be recommended. We did have, when we talked to the deans, we did have 7 deans that said that it should just be, teaching experience should just be required and omit the others. But all other buckets stated that experience in other licensed area should be considered and allowed when entering to an MSA program. Licensure exam, this was universal. Only one EPP dean stated that we should have a licensure exam, but the rest of the advisory groups definitely said we should discontinue the licensure exam, but in lieu of that requirement, we should have performance-based assessments in a school setting, and we will continue the performance-based assessment portfolio. Okay, that was a consensus across the board. Next slide. We all agree that to have an administrative license or a principal license, you should have an advanced degree, a master's. You can enroll in our MSA program to attain that master's. If you already have a master's in another area, then you would enroll in our principal add-on licensure programs, or what we call licensure only. Next slide. Okay. Simultaneously, while refinements to the law were explored, the principal advisory group was also asked by the board to begin fleshing out what they know from experience to be critical components to a rigorous and relevant internship experience. And that is the next portion of our presentation, which will be given by the Maria Mills. A clear set of expectations of internship is not needed for changes to the law, but it is needed for crafting good policy, which is under the State Board of Education's purview. Currently, there is very little in policy on what the internship should include, and that has allowed a wide range of experiences in the field. The board believes that a carefully crafted policy outlining the expectations of the principal internship can lead to better and more consistent prepared candidates. In layman's term, we were hearing often all throughout the field that the pool of candidates for principals was extremely low and lacking. And we were cross-referencing, we have 5,500 licensed administrators in this state, and we could not understand what the superintendents were saying when they made that statement. So I took and I polled the AP Accelerator group, that is 25 aspiring principals that are in the succession planning of each PSU. You had to have that qualification to even get into the program. And we polled them. We asked them, what do you wish you knew prior to going through this accelerator program that would have made you more of an effective principal? And y'all would be shocked if you would see the range of deficits that were in our assistant principals. Now, the AP Accelerator is doing this post-graduation, trying to accelerate their repertoire so they could be effective managers of talent and curriculum experts. But we look back at DPI and say, okay, maybe we need to look at the prep standards going forward so we don't have to have accelerator program after the fact. But all principals, when they finish their programs, they finish their coursework, they finish their internships, they all come out not only highly qualified, but extremely effective. And that is really the foundation and the mission of this work. Because contrary to popular opinion, whether you're ineffective, whether you were prepared ineffectively or effectively, DPI offered, we issued the same license. They have the same license, which leads it up to the superintendents and the PSUs to ascertain whether or not, to ascertain the knowledge base of each applicant. So that, again, that is the mission of our work. Next slide. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to strap up because I was extremely impressed yesterday by this young lady. I introduced to you the North Carolina Regional Principal of the Year, Maria Mills for charter schools. Maria, please take it away.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Tabari. He sets me up so much sometimes that I'm just so welcome and blessed to be here and to present on behalf of all regional principal of the years. To think that this is a think tank, it almost feels like an understatement, and you're just surrounded by greatness. And we've worked really hard to present kind of a layman's term explanation for some of our suggestions, but really also reiterating what Tabari was saying about ensuring that we thought of all components and thought of all stakeholders when we're discussing this effective and successful practices of a principal internship. Next slide. Thank you. Excuse me, I do have that summer cold thing that just refuses to go away, so at least you don't see me. You can just hear my gravelly voice. So we initially just kind of thought of this as where are the components that we're really going to focus in on our assessments to be able to make productive suggestions to Pepsi. We included various school experiences, coaching of the postgraduate program. This portfolio-based assessment, I'll be coming up a couple other times throughout the presentation as just a standardized rubric, but also some components of the EPP and some components of the PSU and the cooperating principle. And then consideration for a two-tiered licensure system, making sure that we're front-loading the support from the principal candidates and then ultimately transitioning them to a full principalship. Okay, so just to kind of set the tone of what a cooperating principal should have the ability to do, and I tried to do this, understanding by design the same way we would teach our teachers and the same way we want our teachers to teach our students. In order to have a successful internship program, you really have to have a successful supervisor. So when thinking of the cooperating principals, there should be some discretion on how we're ensuring that the cooperating principals are being matched appropriately, and that if they have the cognizant abilities to support these interns to be successful, like what Tabari was saying, so that when they have their own school, they have had all the tenets of success. And I think of this as like a circular model here. We want to make sure that cooperating principals have the capacity to influence teacher feelings, promoting professional collaboration, promoting and supporting instructional abilities, supporting the assessment of teaching and learning, and then enlisting the involvement of parents and stakeholders. But what I really just did there was list all 5 different components of this big circle that showcases all of the components of a successful school and a successful leader. And here's my visual that I think will kind of showcase a cooperating principal. It doesn't really start at any of these components of the circle. What it really does is it showcases that at every opportunity, we're collecting data, we're ensuring that the stakeholders, whomever we're talking about, parents, community members, our teachers, our TAs, or our bus drivers, any stakeholder that we're trying to make a decision for is included, and that the data is consistently being used to drive improvement. So I really like this visual, and I wanted to just take a minute to make sure that you see that the cooperating principals do this as a regular principal daily, as effective principals, and that needs to almost be delineated specifically as they're interning, that these 3 themes are a continuous cycle. The goal for the intern is to own something, an authentic project from start to finish of the internship. But what I think is also important, and as we were talking with all of our principal of the year from different regions, what we really wanted the interns to know and understand is that they are integrally connected to multiple components of this circle. And even if that one authentic project maybe doesn't cover it all, a lot of the other hours will be overlapped as well. So taking a minute here just to give you a list, comprehensive doesn't seem to give it justice, but a full and thorough list of the 21 competencies for successful North Carolina school leaders. These are skills and dispositions that transcend the 8 standards of school executives. So thinking again about how a principal is being rated on different rubrics or on the rubric at the end of their year, these are the components that need to be consistently focused on when we're talking about interning. And we're talking about making sure that our interns have successful prognoses for their future careers. In an internship, the principal interns should have opportunities to practice, grow, and demonstrate their competencies. And what we really know is how interwoven all of these are. When we think about competency, the skills and dispositions to transcend various projects, I focus on judgment and personal responsibility. How am I going to teach my intern that? And then I think of customer focus. Well, there is an actual lesson that needs to happen about how to de-escalate an angry parent. And I can fully see a lesson about, here are some inappropriate ways that you'll probably be escalating this conversation. And here are some ways to appropriately handle a formal email in writing to de-escalate a parent. I think just kind of realizing the ins and outs of your day-to-day, your week-to-week, month-to-month, and year-to-year cycle really includes all of these competencies effectively. And then when we think about the portfolio that I mentioned previously, you can see the interwoven nature of many of these competencies. So what an intern needs to know. This is a very comprehensive slide, and I think it's incredibly important. If I could just take maybe 10 seconds for you all to go through it on your own and see what you see as being highlighted we took our time to make sure that this included really a comprehensive list of different projects that an intern could do, and ultimately how these overlap with the competencies from the previous slide. So when you think about technology or time management, you can see some overlap. And I just did what I'm not supposed to do as a teacher. I told you I'd give you about 10 seconds just to review this list. So let me do that in quiet. Okay, so as you went through this, maybe your eyes kind of went to crisis management. And, you know, anecdote for the day, fire marshals here at my school, and they're going to do testing on the fire drill. Oh my goodness, please don't do that. I'm presenting to the state board. Please, 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 please. Can we postpone that till 10 o'clock? I'll buy you a cup of coffee. So basic crisis management that happens in our day-to-day, and then also IEP meetings, and how are we going to make sure that we are, you know, true and unbiased LEAs as administrators in an IEP setting. And then that goes straight to transportation and bus duty. I think that this, while I keep saying the word comprehensive, what I want it to also note is the fluidity of being a successful principal is the ability to manage and the ability to prioritize, but making sure that our interns have an idea of the robust nature of this list and how no matter how much we want, there's always a bullet that we missed that should have been added to this list that they will have to learn. And as long as we give them the skills to learn and handle that properly and professionally. And that leads us to some ineffective practices of principal internship. I have to be honest, my colleagues and I had a lot to discuss about either internship procedures that were not aligned properly, different communications with the EPP. Next slide, please. But ultimately, some of the most common ineffective practices for interns that we noticed was the licensure test did not really provide, period. Considering interns another pair of hands. We spoke about this a lot. While I mentioned bus duty is important and the principal should also be, knees to the ground being on the bus duty once in a while, what's also important is creating the schedule for bus duty, speaking about equity, discussing whether there's a rotation, ensuring that there's no unrest with the staff members. So while some of the nitty-gritty work needs to be done, it shouldn't always be done to the lowest on the totem pole, the principal intern. Ensuring that we as principals and we as school leaders remember that we're actually preparing these principals to be these interns to be principals, not assistant principals or not instructional coaches. You know, they're not second and third on the administrative training. What we're training them to do is to lead a school to success. And then we discussed some of the ineffective practices about the length of the period of internship. Almost consensus was that we needed more time with them, whether it's a semester per various school placement or just longer discussing of hours. Similarly, the way we talked about that overarching project, but also how we discussed how that project was not comprehensive and needed to include other mini projects to ensure that we were preparing them. And then Tabari mentioned this as well, selection process for host principals needs to be with rigorous and alignment. And then I think the things that require further consideration that we would like to discuss or continue our work is really the cooperating principal selection process. This could be a year or 2 year down the road process because it is a little bit ephemeral. It's not quite specific how we can decide this, but in the best of worlds, if we had an actual process for principal selection and then a matching component for the intern, that would be ideal. That would ensure that, you know, the strengths of the host principal really matched either the weaknesses of the intern or the professional goals of the intern. And then this two-tiered licensure process, what I've discussed a little bit here, researching and doing the legwork, but then also designing. Sometimes learning all the things doesn't really come into fruition until you're given a project to actually design the things that you learned. And then that's where your professional discretion kind of blossoms also. Increasing collaboration with EPP supervisors and cooperating principals. This is an ideal learning process. If what you're being taught in the classroom models what you're learning on the field, that will be the most robust learning experience. And I think this is just something for your, Tabari, this might be your slide. I apologize. Did I go too far?
Oh, yes, ma'am. But you were doing so well. I just sat here and watched the band go by. I'm going to tell you
I'm
that.
so sorry. I had it completely in my head, exactly what I was supposed to say and not say. And I'm sorry, Tabari. You take this last slide and I won't take it anymore. I apologize, but thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Maria. Awesome job. Awesome job. Definitely just to enhance what Maria just said, we want to make sure that we reach out and benchmark with our PSUs in regards to the host principal and make sure that we have effective host principals for our interns. You know, some PSUs will go and they'll say, okay, it's your turn. You need to take this internship. And then the intern goes into a situation where it's kind of not wanted. We want the host principal to be highly effective. They're already qualified and be ready to show the intern more than just books, buses, and discipline, but actually make sure that they're instructional leaders, make sure they're great managers of talent, and make sure that they can lead and have certain tenets and a big bag of tricks to be able to get the best out of students and teachers and get them to perform at their personal best. Okay, now we're on this slide. All right, this slide broadly outlines how other states approach principal preparation in areas of concern for North Carolina. And we included this slide, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know we did our homework. We not only engaged with the experts and the work groups within North Carolina, but we also went outside of North Carolina with what we call our six state cohort. Pretty like-minded in approach to education, but we pretty much put this information in here for you really as a benchmark so that you can see that that we're not renegades in the United States, that we're definitely in alignment with other states. These are the initial non-renewable licenses for principals level 1 or tier 1 licenses, which is similar to IPL here. 3-year non-renewable license in North Carolina for all states except for Tennessee, where there is a renewable 5-year license. And as you can see, the range from different states in regards to internship hours, 4 of the states had no requirement, and the other 2 had 320 and 500. All of them required advanced degree. Experience was from no experience to 3 years. And as you can see, 3 of our states actually have the 2-tier licensure system. You finish your coursework and then there's another, you get an initial license, but before you can get a continuing license, you definitely have to jump through another hoop. So we just pretty much wanted to put this in for your reference. All right, and I will end with, just like Maria told you earlier, I really think EPPs and also interns in the state and what PSUs expect is for us to be training principals. We're not training assistant principals. When the principals leave that building, the assistant principal is the principal. So they should have all the tenets, all the competencies, all the skills, and all the dispositions to make sure that they're highly effective, because per the state, they have all the responsibility that's going on in that building. So they need to be highly effective in the deployment of those responsibilities, which will accompany their license that we issue. All right, we threw a lot at you this morning, y'all. The reason why we're doing this, we're asking for your feedback. You have the PowerPoint. I'm only an email away. If you would, please look at that. Any additions or any enhancements that we can make to our approach or our trajectory, we definitely welcome it. We have a lot of experts assembled here in Pepsi in this group, and we definitely want to make sure that we receive those, and if need be, incorporate that into our approach. All right, will there be any questions?
Any questions?
This is Catherine. I do have a question. First of all, Tabari and Maria, you guys did a great job, and y'all, a lot of work has gone into this presentation for sure, and I am really grateful to the Principal Advisory Committee for their time and talent. Tabari, one of the things I remember that we discovered, when you all were looking at all of the different principal prep programs across the state, was not only was there quite a lot of variation in terms of hours of coursework required, but there was also a lot of variation in the courses themselves. Do you remember that we, for example, learned that some programs did not include a course on working with and understanding diverse populations? I did not hear that addressed specific. Did I miss that in this presentation? A discussion of the sort of that there needs to be some kind of an agreed upon set of courses, perhaps?
Yes, ma'am. This is, and I'm glad you asked that, Superintendent Truitt. This is phase 2. This is part 2 of our work, part 1, which is largely led by Dr. Tom Tomberlin. He is doing the coursework refinement piece, and we were charged with the internship. So I think this is part 2 here. I think Pepsi will probably hear in a later juncture the enhancements and the overhaul of the coursework. But that is still ongoing. And yes, Superintendent Truitt, you are correct. We have large variation, not only in the coursework, but in the hours in our EPPs.
Right.
Some EPPs for licensure only, they only require 200 hours of internship and only like 20 hours of coursework. Right. While there be another EPP really 30 minutes away that requires 800 hours of internship and 32 hours of coursework, if you get what I'm saying. So there's a wide range of variability from EPP to EPP. And the deans were receptive in joining with us in this work when we talked to them 2 weeks ago. So yes, ma'am. Stay tuned. That's coming, Superintendent Truitt.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Additional questions? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Wallace and Ms. Mills. We appreciate your presentation, and we will move to the next item on the agenda, subcommittee co-chair updates, and we will start with preparation and entry, Drs. Dempsey and Weddington.
Hank, do we want to flip a coin?
Why don't you start and then I'll jump in.
We've been in the process of working through we actually started with the text from I think it was March presentation that went before Pepsi and the state board. It's been called the straw language. And we've been editing that language, either expanding language that was there, in some cases doing strike through and putting in new language, but we're basically working apprentice up through license 3 and looking at that space where it crosses over into license 4. So we are writing the recommendation language. We're trying to be as specific and concise as possible so that when we're done with the drafting, we think we have language that can transition into the recommendations that would go for Pepsi. So we will finish out that process. I want to reinforce the fact that a core component of what we're doing is trying to stay based in the NTAS standards and the NTAS professional progression document, because we think that informs how a professional moves through increasingly sophisticated levels of practice and potentially positive impact on student learning. So that we're in the closing stages of finishing that up. Hank, anything else?
I didn't even have to jump in. That's great. No, that's a good summary.
Thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Dempsey or Dr. Weddington? All right, we'll move to licensure. Doctors Bullock and Wood.
Morning, everyone. Our last meeting took place on July 15th. We spent the majority of that meeting talking about license 1 and 2, specifically on whether or not those 2 license areas should be combined in any form. We will be making some recommendations on that to Pepsi as well. We also spent some time talking about the time frames of license 1 and 2 and how many years a person should be able to hold those licenses compared to the draft model that was released to Pepsi. So we'll be making some recommendations on that as we move forward. That'll be the main topic of our next meeting, trying to finalize that, along with looking at some specific measures that will need to be put in place to move through the licensure levels. We did decide on a time frame for license 3, which we'll be making some recommendations on. And then we spent the last portion of our meeting talking about renewal credits. So our next meeting is coming up here in about 2 weeks. And do you have any additional information? I see your name that you're joining us as well.
I do not. That was great, Wesley. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. We'll move to advancement and development. Is Ms. Stover or Dr. Marr on the call?
I don't see them, Dr. Miller, but I can let the group know what they covered.
Okay. All right.
So for their July meeting, they focused on looking at the new infographic that Julie Pittman and Maureen had put together. And there was reflection on that. And that's something that was also shared in the co-chairs meeting yesterday and will also continue to be shared at future subcommittee meetings with the other subcommittees. They also focused on support for teachers as a principal, a mentor, and a teacher leader through this model work. And so they focused on different details around that support and specifically how that support should look. They looked at the verification process for different measures that are included within the draft model. They had 2 recommendations for other subcommittees. One was for budget and compensation, the professional advancement accounts to increase their $2,500 amount, and that is still under consideration and discussion for budget and compensation. And then also they suggested to licensure to combine licenses 1 and 2, and licensure, I'll let them speak to that next. And then special category licenses, thinking about retirees and where they fit in with this model. And then the pilot recommendations for implementation for the model at a later time. They were thinking through that type of step.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ed.
You're welcome.
And we'll finish up with budget and compensation, Drs. Fleming and Graham.
I'm happy if Dr. Graham is on, certainly happy to share the floor with him.
I don't think he's.
I don't see him. Well, It's on me. I'm gonna go off of memory here, but our last meeting we really focused on the license for salary, and we have had just a small working group on kind of refining what exactly that would be. There have been conversations of putting annual increases in rather than just at renewal time or just at certain times within the salary schedule. Those conversations have gone from a 0.5% annual increase all the way up to 1.5. Conversations around longevity pay and what that would look like if we went back to longevity pay plus the salary, obviously, or continuing to eliminate longevity, but ensuring that at least that percentage is in that annual increase. There have been some questions about lateral entry out-of-state teachers and where they would fall. Certainly, example, that would be CTE teachers coming out of industry and coming into teaching. Would they have to start at a license 3 salary, which I believe is $45,000, or would they go somewhere else on the scale? So there's some of those things we still have to work on. Also, we have nailed down the professional account that teachers would get for professional development throughout their renewal cycle. Hold harmless, we're still somewhat working on, but certainly teachers would be held harmless on their salary if for some reason the new salary was lower. At this point, I don't know that that would even be the case because of some of the salary proposals we have talked about. But at our next meeting, we do plan on coming forward with what we hope would be a final recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? All right. We'll move on into some membership updates. During the May Pepsi meeting, as you all know, Dr. Van Dempsey was elected as next chair of Pepsi. Because this is my final meeting as a member of Pepsi and as chair, I wanted to formally introduce him as the next chair of Pepsi. Dr. Dempsey currently serves as the dean of the Watson College of Education at UNC Wilmington. He's been a member of Pepsi since its inception in the fall of 2017, and he also serves on the executive committee for the Drive Task Force. So please welcome Dr. Dempsey. And Dr. Dempsey, if you want to say anything, you're welcome to do so.
Yeah, I will just make a few comments. I'll start by saying, Patrick, I was just thinking, I can't believe September got here so fast, is getting here so fast, and you're probably thinking September can't get here fast enough. So I appreciate the acknowledgement and the introduction. I want to start just a few comments. Thank Patrick for the leadership and the work and the energy that he has brought to this. I remember back when Pepsi first started, this was uncharted territory at that point. We were figuring it out a meeting at a time. I think your leadership for something that was generally new for the state of North Carolina has been exceptional. In particular, I want to acknowledge to the commission and thank you at this moment, number one, for the calmness, that a leader, particularly in education, who is calm, and how much I appreciate that. Your measuredness and your reasonness about how you have approached the chair role and the leadership you brought and the sense of respect you have, not just for members of the commission and for folks with whom we work, but for the profession, and for your sense of respect and how that translates into support and investment in what we do for educators and as educators in North Carolina. So thank you. Also want to tell members of the commission that it's an honor and it's humbling to be stepping into this role, particularly to follow our first chair. I have tremendous respect for the work that Pepsi does, but also the people on this commission who do this work. We represent a broad spectrum of education and the work of educators in North Carolina, and I have the utmost respect for who you are and what you do on behalf of our state. And my goal as chair is to try to do right by that. So thank you, everybody. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, Dr. Dempsey. I appreciate that. Also, during the May Pepsi meeting, Dr. Aaron Fleming was elected as the next vice chair of Pepsi. He will succeed Dr. Michael Marr as vice chair. However, Dr. Marr will remain on Pepsi as a member. Dr. Fleming has also served on Pepsi since its inception, and please join me in welcoming Dr. Fleming to the role of vice chair. And Dr. Fleming, we just heard from you. I don't know if you want to say anything else, but we'll give you the opportunity, and if not, we'll move right on.
I'll make it short, say thank you, look forward to working with everyone, and Chair Dempsey, and to Dr. Patrick Miller, thank you for a wonderful career. Congratulations on professionally retiring, but also thank you and congratulations on your work here with Pepsi and serving as chair.
Thank you, sir. And we'll welcome a couple new members who are with us today, but officially start September 1. The first that we want to welcome is Ms. Leah Carper. Ms. Carper is an English teacher at Northern Guilford High School. She's been there since 2016. She's the new NC Teacher of the Year. She will start her term with Pepsi, as I said, on September 1, and she's turned her video on. She can wave to everybody and say hi. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And we're excited to have you. Also, I'd like to welcome Dr. Scott Elliott. Scott is the superintendent of Watauga County Schools, and like Ms. Carper, his term will officially start on September 1st. So welcome, Dr. Elliott.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Looking forward to the work.
All right, thank you. And I would like to thank the following members for their service as they join me in completing their terms with Pep-C. First is Dr. Wesley Wood. He's the Assistant Superintendent for Personnel and Human Resources in Wilkes County Schools, and he has served as the co-chair of the Licensure Subcommittee. Also like to thank Ms. Eugenia Floyd, the 2021-22 Teacher of the Year, and Ms. Lauren Janeski, who is an English teacher at Millbrook High School in Wake County. And with that, for the final time, I would like to thank commission members, advisors, and staff for your preparation for today's meeting. The next monthly meeting will be held virtually on Thursday, September 8th, beginning at 9 a.m. At this time, we've now completed our meeting, and unless there's additional business, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion. This is Connie. Thank you, Dr. Miller, for all that you've done for Pep-C, and enjoy your retirement.
Thank you, Dr. Locklear. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Aaron Fleming.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. We are adjourned.